Buongiorno. My name is Michelle Jones. I am Emily Beach's mom. I'd like to tell you the story about Emily's great-grandparents, Dominic and Minnie Michelina Rocchio. They both came over from Italy many years ago, and my grandfather, when I was a little child, used to tell me the most incredible stories about coming over from the old country. In fact, one of the stories, it starts out where he was in a little tiny village called Gallowmatese. It was in the mountains in Italy, and Emily, when she was a little girl, actually got to visit the birthplace home of my grandfather, Rocchio, Grandpa, Dominic. She was 4 years old, and we went over to Italy, and she got to see where he was born. And the house was so old and old-fashioned that the basement of the house had room for the chickens and the different livestock to come in out of the cold at night. Grandpa, when he was 17, had the opportunity to come over here from Italy, over to the States, with his cousin. His cousin actually gave him the ticket to come on the boat from Italy, but Grandpa had to walk well over 100 miles to get to the port of Naples, which Emily also saw when she was little. So I believe Grandpa hitchhiked, and he walked. He did whatever it took to get to the port in Naples so he could come to the United States for a better life. Over in Italy, it was very quaint and beautiful at Gallowmatese, but it was hard to really earn a living, and Grandpa had a dream to come to the United States, which was everybody's dream, the American dream. Well, when Grandpa got to Ellis Island, the first story that I remember, which was he would tell me, was that off this big ship he had to jump into New York Harbor because he had a rash, and it was most likely nothing, the rash, but he was so afraid that he wouldn't be able to come through Ellis Island, and they would send him back on a ship. It turns out later on, Grandpa, along with a lot of other people who jumped off the ship, were accepted as citizens. They were able to come and get their green card, and they explained to them not to be afraid. Grandpa had many stories, such as his first job was working in a hospital in New York. And I used to always tell him, "Tell me the story about the hospital, Granddad." Well, he'd say, "Michelle, I'm going to tell you a story." And his story was that he was working in this big New York hospital, and he went in the wrong room. Now, Grandpa couldn't speak a lick of English back then. The room, he said, was just full of people's heads and arms and legs. I'm not sure exactly what was in that room, except that maybe it's where they discarded body parts. I'm not sure, but he said he ran out of that room, out of the hospital, all the way back to the Bronx, and never went back to the job at the hospital. So he decided his career in the hospital was over. He found out that he could come down to West Virginia from New York with a cousin of his. So he came to West Virginia, and he began his long career working in a steel mill. And Grandpa was very proud to be an American.